Okay, welcome to our second part of our Year 10 history lesson for this week. Carrying on looking at how William secured control of England from the years 1066 to 1069. And last time we looked at the Marcher earldoms, and we talked about how William had rewarded his followers such as Roger Montgomery, Hugh d'Avranches, and William Fitz-Osbern as Earls of Hereford, Shrewsbury, and Chester, and gave them control to put down rebellions in Wales. And people like Edric the Wild launched a Saxon rebellion in the borderlands of Wales, and they successfully put that rebellion down. We also mentioned in the southwest, Harold Godwin's sons had tried to conquer tried to start a rebellion around Exeter that William was able to put down. But for all of this, William had tried to be fairly generous to the Saxons. He'd allowed Saxon lords like Morcar and Edwin to keep their lands, and he'd allowed people in Exeter to surrender without any punishment if they surrendered to him, which they did, avoiding any bloodshed. And so William had basically allowed Saxons who hadn't fought against them to keep their lands, try and keep them on the side. The simple fact that William only had 10,000 knights, and the Normans had something, and the Saxons were something like 2 to 3 million Saxons in England. So William, heavily outnumbered, couldn't fight them all by himself. He had to rely on the Saxons actually supporting his kingship. And although he could build castles around the country, which obviously meant his men would be secure until help could arrive, these alone weren't enough to keep control of the country without support of the local population. Today, though, we're going to look at the situation in the north. In 1068, William faces a major rebellion in the north of England. Now, if we go back to the Saxon period, as you know, in 1065, Tostig, Harold's younger brother, who was Earl of Northumbria, faced a major revolt, and Harold had him replaced with Morcar. The reason Tostig faced a major revolt is probably because he was trying to raise taxes in Northumbria. Now, Northumbria, traditionally, historically, was a separate kingdom. And in the 10th century, 9th and 10th centuries, it had been conquered by the Vikings. It became what was known as a Danelaw. This meant that many of the local landlords, many of the people in Northumbria were of Danish descent, and the language they spoke would have been a form of English mixed with Danish that was probably unintelligible to the people in the south. Couldn't understand the accent. But it meant that Northumbria pretty much ruled itself. The Earls of Northumbria pretty much had the power almost of kings, and so long as they saw allegiance to the king in Wessex, in London, they were left alone. Until Tostig came along and tried to raise taxes, do things his own way, and he was forced out. William obviously doesn't understand the subtlety. William hadn't understood that Northumbria basically was pretty much semi-independent, and so he tried to rule things how he saw fit, and this caused a number of issues. Now, we said before that he let Morcar stay as Earl of Northumbria. However, this wasn't entirely the case. Northumbria is a large place, and historically there are two areas. The southern part, which is now Yorkshire, was known as an area called Derra, around York in the area of Yorkshire, and the northern part was called Bernicia, which is now modern-day Northumberland and County Durham. And William gave away half of Morcar's earldom, and I'm just going to highlight kind of where he gave away. He gave away basically this area from Tees up to the River Tweed. And so this area in the middle was given to a chap called Copsig. Now, Copsig was a friend of Tostig and was of Viking descent. But Copsig wasn't very popular because he'd been helping Tostig raise taxes. Within 5 weeks in 1067 of Copsig arriving in Northumbria, he was murdered by the locals. We're not quite sure how he died, but he's murdered, and obviously this causes William a problem. He's made what he thought was a local Saxon lord, and he's been murdered by the Saxons. So William tries again. He sends another person called Cospatrick, and Cospatrick is descended from an old Earl of Northumbria, and he was sent up to Bernicia to become Earl in this northern part of Northumbria. Unfortunately, within a year, by 1068, Cospatrick is being told by William to raise taxes, and Cospatrick realises that if he tries to raise taxes against his own people, they are likely to, you've guessed it, murder him. So he decides to go into rebellion instead. Morcar and Edwin also go into rebellion. They go into rebellion from the area of York and from the Midlands. And so the whole of the north of England and large parts of Midlands very quickly go into rebellion against William. So I'm just going to go to the next page. You can see in your booklet that there's a number of reasons. I'll just run through, I'll pretty much talk through most of them already. Edwin is unhappy because, it's not been mentioned, but Edwin was unhappy because William had promised Edwin he could marry William's daughter, but went back on his word. In the south, people like Odo Bayo, who was William's half-brother, had unlawfully seized land from the Saxon lords, going against William's word. Morcar, again, had his land taken away and given to Copsig. William had imposed a heavy gel tax, so these taxes again cost Patrick. He replaced Copsig, was faced with this huge tax, probably result in him, being attacked by his own people, so he didn't levy it. And castles being built across the north of England were seen as repressive. You imagine these big castles being built up, pulling people's houses down to build them. It's a sign of Norman power. It's not very popular. And so overall, Edwin and Morcar and Cospatrick are not very happy. They're joined in rebellion by Edgar Atheling, who obviously they tried to make king in 1066, and the whole of the north of England goes into rebellion. However, when William marches north with an army, he quickly puts the rebellion down. He marches north with a show of strength. He starts wherever he comes across places like Nottingham, Warwick. He burns the town. He burns many houses down, and then builds big castles. Obviously, Nottingham Castle and Warwick Castle are two famous castles. Warwick, you can go and visit today. The motte is still there, actually built. So up go these castles, a sign of power, and quite quickly, Edwin and Morcar realise that they can't beat William, and so they go back to him and basically beg forgiveness. William sticks a castle up in York as well as a sign of power, and he does forgive, just like in Exeter. He forgives Edwin and Morcar. They come back to him, they beg forgiveness, and he accepts. Edgar Atheling, meanwhile, escapes to Scotland, which is obviously a separate country, and King Malcolm III there gives him protection. He's actually a relative of Edgar. In fact, Edgar actually marries Malcolm's daughter eventually. So, end result is the rebellion comes to an end. The consequence is that William starts to change tactic. Rather than trying to keep the Saxon lords in power, he decides to put a Norman in charge of the north. He's had two earls, Copsig and Cospatrick. One's been murdered, one's rebelled against him. Morcar, he's left in power, has rebelled against him, so he tries a different tactic. Instead, Robert Cumin's going to be put in charge, or Robert de Comines, which is an area in Normandy, actually named after. And Edgar Atheling has escaped, so he's still at large, so he hasn't necessarily solved the whole problem. He builds a castle in York, but again, the north has still not been properly suppressed. And he hasn't actually defeated the army, he's just put the rebellion down peacefully. And so this problem isn't going to go away. So, there's a couple of questions on your booklet for you to fill in, just to summarise why Edwin and Morcar planned a revolt, looking at the reasons why, and summarise what actions William took in the revolt. The two questions you'd like to get in an exam are a question asking you why the revolt happened, or a question asking why William successfully ended the revolt. They could be a 12 marker, could be a 16 marker, looking at the most important reason why it failed. So that is the end of the second kind of part of the lesson, looking at Edwin and Morcar. So you should have completed your booklet, those questions there about the march to Eldons and the land given out, and you should have completed this summary on Edwin and Morcar, having read through these key events.